Oh, God. People, before I just bang my funny bone, people deluded. I'm back again now, not to keep going over the same old tired subject of Aaron Ramsey. Will he, won't he? He's left, mentally, in my head, he's left the club. Like, he's left the club until I hear, or if I hear he signed a new deal, which looks unlikely, he's left the club. So he's not one of my brothers no more. He's not one of my guys anymore in that sense. But until that happens, until he officially leaves, we have to stand by him. He has to do right by the club. But I really want him sold in January if this is the case, people. And I say that because I don't say that because it's not an easy answer when players get into this situation. This is why I'm big on, which I've said with Ramsey, Jack once upon a time, Ox and Alexis. Before the season starts, you need to know these man's intentions. You should know their intentions will begin this mid-season towards the back end of next season, back end of the season of last season or a season. Then, all right, cool. You give them time to reflect and stuff. But by July, you should know what these man's intentions. Are they trying to sign a new deal or are they trying to bust out? If they're trying to stay, great. If they're trying to bust out, we thank them for their service or thank Ramsey for what he's done, but we sell and bring in a replacement. And life moves on. Instead, we find ourselves, which ironically is not being spoken about because we're 10 wins from 10, possibly if we beat Sporting 11 wins from 11. Great position to be in. So it's all happy at Arsenal. We're all praising Unai Emery and he's getting a load of plaudits and the players are. And on one hand, we're papering over cracks. On the other hand, we're doing quite well. His contract is not being spoken about. Versus if we were to suddenly start going through a loss of form, you would see his contract stuff filter back. Right now we're winning, so it's the tone of when he is included in any article is how is he going to get back in the side? Can he play this and that? If we go through a dip of form, does he want to stay here where he can't compete, etc.? I want him sold in January. It's a difficult decision. Because when you get yourself into a situation like this, you're stuck between, do we just keep him to the end? We paid $5 million for him. At the end of the day, to lose someone that's a 20 by Arsenal's negotiating standards, 40 by anybody else's minimum player, regardless of his ability that can bring him for the club. It's a loss. But if you look at it, that we spent $5 million, we've got 10 years out of him. He's scored in a FA Cup final. He's been a mainstay in the player. It's not really that much of an L considering the wages he's on that could be freed up. It's not that much of an L to just carry him on to the end of the season and utilise him this season or whenever. It's a bit tricky because it's very hard to bring in players in January, not in the sense that it's impossible. It's just clubs you're gonna have to overpay. They know you're desperate. There's less negotiating room, so that means less poker faces. It'll be by Arsenal standards, transfers take a while as well, and they still are taking a while. So it'll be hard to bring in someone significant, like for like replacement in January for Ramsey. And God forbid if anyone gets injured, we need bodies. To which, if we're trying to get into the top 4 or win the Europa League, Ramsey can help us with. There's no denying that. So it is a tough decision to make, and it is a case of, do you cut your nose off to spite your face, essentially, to a degree. I want him sold in January purely because of 20 million. I say I want him sold, but I want him to stay. Like I say, it's a difficult decision, people. But when you look at it, he's completed 90 minutes twice. Before I get into that, I want him to stay purely because there's going to be a time when, sadly, players get injured, players are out of form, and he will stand up to be counted. And he gives us, I know his goal-scoring exploits, or the fact that he's a goal threat, for me anyways, I was overrating it until I woke up last season and thought, even ironically in a good season for him, his threat of being a goal scorer is vastly overrated and overstated. But in that sense, there's rarely any midfielder at Arsenal that you think is going to score. Like, if you're looking at all their midfielders and say, if you had to bet your life and your parents' life and your family members' lives, who is going to end up as a top goal scorer out of all them central midfield players and players that can play there, you're saying Aaron Ramsey. And if you're not, you're a liar. Obviously, Ozil's doing his thing on the goal scoring front, so it don't really have much logic to it. But do you get it? We might as well sell him. I don't know whether his head's here or not, but on the basis of things, he's not staying. He's not staying past this season. So he's not committed to the long term. He's only played 90 minutes twice this season. I mean, he got subbed against. He's only completed 90 minutes twice. Sorry, he got subbed against City after below par. Came off the bench against Chelsea. Obviously, came on against Fulham. And Watford and things like that. In fact, it might not have been Watford. Either way, the last 3 games, he's been a substitute. After Thingy talking about building the side around him and stuff, he hasn't been any of that, and he's seen Iwobi lap him in that. He's seen Ozil put in a good performance in that, and he's so far this season, Ramsey hasn't really put in any performances. Yeah, he was involved in a great teamwork goal, but he hasn't really been playing that well or done anything. He got 6 minutes in the last cup outing. He'll probably start against Sporting. But should we let him go, man? I actually don't want to sell Ramsey, but you've got to look at these things away from emotion. Like, you look at it, El Nene could probably be sold in a year or two as well, but you've got El Nene, you've got Xhaka, you've got Torreira, you've got Maitland-Niles, you've got Guendouzi that could fill in the pivot if Ramsey was to be considered in the pivot. We know under Unai Emery so far he's not in the pivot, he's given that 10 role, to which you've obviously got Iwobi who, if need be, can play in the pivot or be forced there. Can play in the 10. You've got Ozil who should be there. You've got Mkhitaryan who should be there. You can actually get rid of that 10 and play another midfielder closer to each other. So there's things we can do. There's a lot of midfielders at the club, but if there's injuries, loss of form, things can happen. But I just see it's time to, we need to set a precedent at this club. If you don't want to be here, we need to stop going into seasons with this sort of stuff. Obviously, he's not world class, but if a man was world class or something like that, there's exceptions to the rule, innit? But we need to put our foot down. Like, we really need to, if you want to be here, you want to be here. Aaron Ramsey might want to be here. He more or less said he wants to stay, but for whatever reason, it's not going to happen. Contracts were removed and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's a difficult decision. But if we look at it, he's been underwhelming since the season started. He's barely really regularly featured. He has, because he's got fair minutes, but he ain't completed 90 minutes too tough. He's not really taken games by the strut of his neck. If we're honest, the 10 role was not him. Even for years, it looked like he was complaining to finally play central, play there. It is what it is, and to be honest, if I was him, I'd have a bit of bad blood to a degree, because I would remember when Arsenal fans used to give me a lot of crap, and I would kind of want to hit them where it hurts. But it is what it is, man. I actually want Ramsey to stay and sign a new deal, but if I move away from the emotion and what I would like to happen as a supporter and look at it with the cerebral eye, the Ludigoonist eye, you've got to get that 20 million in January or so, man. Like, you've got to. On one hand, if there's injuries in January, and we might have to bite the bullet and keep him and stuff like that, but I would sell him, man. Sell him to who? I don't know. He's got a young family. Does he want to stay in London? To which, if I was him, you run down your contract and start negotiating with Chelsea at the end of the season. You run down your deal. That means you have more negotiating space for wages and stuff like that. United have been linked with him. Liverpool have been linked with him. I'm a bit pessimistic. If I think he could play and cut his teeth and rotate at Liverpool, but it's a bit iffy. City should take